What time is it? It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
Welcome.
Welcome.
I don't know why we say welcome as soon as we open the door, because there's only like 2 people here. So we should wait
there's
good
There's
30,
three
40
now.
seconds.
There's 3 now.
Okay.
And it's
Oh, they're all
growing.
coming in. They're streaming in. Oh, I love it when he gets to double digits within the first 10 seconds.
Okay, we got
Welcome, everyone.
a trivia question for today, and people will understand later why we're asking it. But how many children does Sunjay Nath have? Put it in the chat box.
Yeah.
We know we can't put it, Richard.
Can I guess?
How many children? No, you can't guess.
And can I include myself?
2.5. Carol.
It's 2.5 men, actually, Carol.
That's right. Stephen Rayfield says 4. You're more prolific than we think. Wait, this
Don't
is
give any
3.
clues, Jeff.
Well, these are 3 that. Oh, sorry. These are children that we know of.
That's exactly. Exactly. 0. I
0
am a
children.
child.
Glad everybody's joining us. It's 1 o'clock, guys. What does that mean, Richard?
It means that it's time for Every Other Wednesday. And today is Wednesday, October the 5th, 2022. And what's more,
What's more?
The anticipation's
Is
killing
this.
me.
What time is it? It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
Carol, sit down.
I have to say that I'm glad that thing is only like 8 or 9 seconds long.
yeah, it could be really annoying if it was any longer.
You're right. It's a very awkward 8 or 9
That's
seconds.
right.
If it was like 30 seconds, it would be like. Anyway.
Exactly. Hi, guys. Good to see you. And by the way, the correct answer is Sunjay.
I have 3 sons.
Yes, you
So
do.
I stole from the old.
Where's that? I'm having an inspiration for maybe a sitcom.
There you go. Exactly.
And
Exactly what I
their
was going
names are.
Xander is my eldest son, and his name is with a Z. Zayden is my middle son, and his name is with an X. And Avison is my youngest, and it's with an A. 3 sons plus Sanjay equals 4. That's right, Stephen. Your math was absolutely bang on.
Perfect.
And I just want you to know, given there are 3 boys in my house that are now ages 12, 10, and 14, the toilet seat is always up in my house. So if you ever are here, you'll know exactly why.
I bet. Welcome, everybody. So that should be a hint and a good segue into our show today, right? So today is all things Sunjay Nath.
Woot woot, my favorite subject.
Ours too. You know, unfortunately, we're missing one of our musketeers, one of our culture club. He is, as we speak, he is winging his way from Ireland back to Alberta. He was at the, what is it?
The Global Speakers Federation Conference in Dublin, which just took place.
Yeah, good for him. So
That's right. And Jeff, where were you last time?
I have been in Africa, East Africa, speaking in 3 countries, almost getting eaten by an elephant, but that's about a whole other story.
And sorry, quick question, Jeff. Did you bless the rains down in Africa? And if you had, can you sing it like Toto, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
When we're not on air and being recorded, I'd be glad to do that. So anyway, greetings from East Africa. It was a wonderful trip. I'm still jet lagged. So if I fall asleep, Sunjay, it's not because of you, I promise. So anyway, so I'm going to formally introduce Sunjay. As many of our viewers know, we have taken turns kind of featuring each one of us on a show. And we wanted to feature Sunjay because we pity him, actually. Richard, did you know that Sunjay was like the youngest speaker in the world?
I know at one time he was. Yes, at one time he was. Are you going to introduce yourself, Jeff? And
oh, I am so sorry. Thank you. Yeah, that's a big good thing. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jeff Tobe. I am Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania based. I am a former Canadian. So Richard, you're outnumbered on this show.
Yeah, well, I always am.
I train organizations taking through a 1-year customer experience initiative. Richard?
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Richard Haddon, and I'm an author and a speaker, author of Contented Cows Still Give Better Milk and its prequels. And I live in Jacksonville, Florida. We're fine here. Our neighbors 200 miles to the southwest are anything but fine. So once again, here in Jacksonville, we were very, very fortunate. While everyone in Jacksonville, not everyone, while some people in Jacksonville were on Facebook marking themselves safe, I put on that I marked myself lucky because we really were. So anyway, glad to be here and glad to be hearing more about Sunjay, whom I think, Jeff, you and I are going to learn things today, and we've known Sunjay for years.
Absolutely. And by the way, Ashley, I go along with Ashley that we're playing. We truly are all praying for Florida. And I love what Frederick said. That elephant joke, how do you eat Jeff Tobe one bite at a time? So I'll take that with me. Thank you. So what I was referring to before, because I get to introduce Sunjay. Sunjay is a resident of Oakville, Ontario, a suburb of Toronto. In 2005, correct me if I'm wrong, but Sunjay became the youngest speaker in Canada and the third youngest in the world to earn his CSP. Many of you have noticed, nobody's ever asked, but I'll tell you anyway, that all of us and all of your hosts are certified speaking professionals, the highest designation for the National Speakers Association and for the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. Wow, Sunjay, 2005, that's great. We'll get into that. But he started an international speaking business. I think you were 19 years old. He's 22 now. And many years ago. And you know what? At 19, Richard, he couldn't even rent a car, but he was running a speaking.
I know.
Exactly. Many of you know, we've alluded to
a lot of people have fake IDs to get in bars. I had fake ID to rent cars, and I wish I was joking when I said that. I really did.
That's great. We've alluded to the fact many times on the program, and I want to actually talk about it more today, that he is the developer, he is the author of a book, known as the 10-80-10 principle, and we'll talk more about that. Basically, if you don't know, he graduated with a degree in mathematical engineering, I think, and then a master's in business administration. Like I say, he's best known for the 10-80-10 principle, and we'll talk about how that combines best practices with small wins to help empower audiences to reach their stretch goals, I think your official bio says. So, Sunjay, what did I miss?
That's it. I think we can end early today.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, everyone. So,
well, you know, the truth is that Sunjay does have a long and storied career, and it begins with what was the first year that you started, that you earned money speaking?
January. It was January 8th, 1995. So we're coming up to my 28th year. This January 8th will be my 28th year as a professional speaker.
Wow. And was it at that point that you looked something like this?
That would have been late 90s. That would have been the dress. And if you notice in the background, I was speaking to students. That was probably a Christmas-esque event. So I used to dress with cool ties like Bugs Bunny and such. And I used to grease my hair and decided that it was easier to keep it short enough that I didn't have to comb it. So I didn't have to gel.
Were you pregnant with one of your boys?
Yeah, down boy. Yes, I used to push the 200-pound threshold.
Wow.
So I don't know where you got these blackmail photos, but they must be destroyed.
Well, I was telling him earlier, my goal is 200 pounds. So I'd like to get down to that. But Sunjay is only 4'9".
Okay, so sorry, since Carol made
here's another.
Yeah, since Carol made the reference, and you can tell I look very similar, but you can probably tell this in all the pictures from the quality. But if you go back to the previous, actually, I'll get back to it. This is something I used to do, I still do, and it's got a cult following I do with youth audiences called guacking. And someone said it looks like my fingers are double jointed. I will demonstrate guacking for you in live after you're done your little slideshow here.
Okay, walking. I can't wait to see that. So then Sunjay did progress, you know, in mind, body, and spirit, and so here he is. When was this, Sunjay? Because man, you're kind of ripped there.
There you go. That's got to be about 10 years ago.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. You were going to hurl that bottle at someone.
That audience, again, actually, that was in front of a youth audience as well. I believe it was a group called Count Me In. I think there were 3,000 students in that audience.
It had to be a student audience because you probably would have worn a collar if it was a corporate audience.
Very, very true.
That's
But
right.
I'm actually getting away from wearing collars at corporate audiences. I'm working with a new branding person, and they're whipping that out of me, going like, "You
Good.
should not be doing that."
Good.
Well, so speaking of wearing a collar,
There he is.
we do have this shot of Sunjay a little bit later.
Yeah,
When
that
was
was just in Florida of this summer. So that was
okay.
weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So those pictures are available for purchase on our website if anybody is interested.
So tell us what twerking is. No, I'm sorry. What was it called?
Twerking. No, not twerk. That's something totally different. Guac.
Okay.
Guac. And so there's a whole bit spiel around it and stuff. And the true story goes, I was asked to speak for a youth event, and they asked me to come to, it was like grades fourth to sixth graders or something. And they came up afterwards and they said, Sunjay, and this was, we're going back 25 years ago, maybe 27 years ago. And they said to me, hey, the students loved your presentation. We got a big T-ball game after school. You want to come and watch the T-ball game? And I'm like, 8-year-old T-ball, what a spectator sport. So I go out there and they see me, they recognize me, they're all excited. They're coming tugging at my pants and they're like, play with me, play with me. So in an effort to get them to entertain themselves, I do the thing called guacking. It looks really painful, but I assure you it's not. And what it involves me doing is putting my hands together, hitting myself in the head, making a really cool sound. So in an effort to get them to entertain themselves, I taught them how to guac. And it works like this. So we have these mass kids starting to hit themselves in the head. And like I said, since to this day, I've told the story, and there's, again, more bells and whistles when I tell it full. But it's got a cult following, and to the point of people have created the double guac and the triple guac and the guacamole. And
The guacamole, yeah.
Yes, I wish I was making that up.
Guac and chips. Yeah. Perfect. Richard, I don't know if you know, talking about pictures, that Sunjay and I once shared the stage together as well in Mississauga, Ontario.
I see that. Yeah, very good. Very
Anyway, enough of that. Although
yeah.
there is a question.
There is. It's a very relevant question. I think we
Yeah.
do want to hear about the 10-80-10 principle, and that's
Right.
very relevant to culture and the kinds of things that we always talk about. But Rhonda's asked a really great question, and that is, what is your most memorable event and why?
Oh, geez. I will tell you this. I don't know about most. I have a problem with extremes. Worst, best, favorite, least. I'll tell you some favorable ones.
Just tell us one that stands out from the
So
many
there
that
is-
you've done.
In fact, I mean, this will launch into sort of how I kind of got started. When people ask me, where did you? When I was in grade 10, sorry, American. I'll speak American. When I was in 10th grade, I had my school went up to my very good friend Victor, and they said, "Hey, Victor, there is a leadership event this weekend. Would you like to go? It's just like leadership seminars and workshops and stuff." And he said, "It sounds like a nerd fest. No, thank you." So then they went to my other good friend, Stacy, and they said, "Stacy, there's a leadership event this weekend. It's a weekend of seminars, workshops. Would you like to go?" And she said, "Sounds like a nerd fest. No, thank you." So third on the list, they came to me and they said, "Sunjay, leadership weekend. Would you like to go?" And I said, "Sounds like a nerd fest. I'm in." So I went. And to me, it was a very life-changing experience. As a 15-year-old, I went to this event and I actually saw speakers and the impact they had on me. I'd never experienced that kind of a thing from a speaker. I had a teacher doing a math lesson or a guest speaker. It was always very boring, but to sort of animate and inspire and to kind of wake up things within me was like, wow. And so I remember sitting there in that audience thinking, one day I'm going to come back and I'm going to speak for this event. And I remember them actually, like, I'm going through the visualization in my head going, they're gonna like, I actually heard them reading my bio, but I remember the last line in the bio that they were reading it. It said something like, "Oh, and Sunjay sat where you sat, and he's like a product of this program." Like, so I vividly remember that. And so fast forward.
Wait, I know the question. I'm going to ask a question. How many times did they have you back?
Right. So last May was my 31st year in a row involved with the program.
Incredible. That's just incredible.
So I went for the first couple of years, I went back as a counselor. And then since 1995, I've spoken on the program every year, except for the one year that they canceled it for COVID. So they had a virtual one in there, and hopefully this year we're going to get back. I'm assuming they're going to invite me again. But so going back to that program was definitely one of the huge highlights. And again, having some of the kids say to me some of the things that I was thinking when I heard some of those speakers. And to this day, I've actually never charged them a dime. In fact, I almost always sponsor kids to go. So it's something that's near and dear to me. And it really, hit home. At the same time, too, I've spoken on the Intrepid spacecraft, the water ship in New York. I've spoken in an underground bunker once. I've had some really cool experiences, but in terms of actual impact, it would be that program because of what it meant to me.
That's great.
Yeah. Cool.
And so the first time you spoke, let's sort of bring people up to date. But the first time you spoke, what was the topic when you were talking to youth?
Okay, so I was that kid in high school. When I graduated high school, I was valedictorian, student council.
You already are. You still are that kid, by the way.
Okay, so I ran the school store. I was in the lead role in plays. I played volleyball. And so when I graduated, I went off to study engineering. And 2 years removed from high school, the then student council president called me up. And she was I was a bit of a mentor to her. And she called me up and said, Sunjay, we want to pay you to come and talk to people about the benefits of getting involved in school. And I was like, you want to pay me? Normally people pay me to shut up. This is good. And so I started doing backflips in my house where I was with the students I was living with. And the one girl I lived with, Krista, she used to come, she's like, what are you so excited about? And I'm like, well, they want to pay me to speak. Normally they pay me to shut up. This is good. And she said, well, what are you going to speak on? I'm getting involved in leadership and I don't know. And she said, well, that sounds great. And the thing is, Krista was a coach for a competitive swim team. She goes, why don't you come and talk to the swim team? And I'm like, okay. So she introduced me to the head coach.
Did you say, are you going to pay me?
I didn't actually, but she introduced me to the head coach of the Kingston Blue Marlins competitive swim club. And the guy said, this sounds great, but it sounds like more than a one-shot deal. You should come in every week. And I was like, okay. So there was a 19-year-old kid waking up 6:30 Saturday mornings to go to talk to 8 to 10-year-olds about dealing with your parents, communication, setting goals. And the thing is, I was 19 and in university, and I would literally go out and get in at 2 o'clock in the morning. I would then write my talk, wake up at 5 that morning and go deliver it.
See.
And what happened was some of the older kids started sitting in on the sessions, and then some of the parents started sitting in on the sessions. And this one gentleman came up to me and he said, that was really great. He goes, I run a youth group. Would you like to come and speak to the youth group? And I said, sure, what the hell? No, I didn't. It was a youth group. I said, I'd love to. I said, that'd be great. And so I go, and 45 minutes was the presentation. And the thing I was doing for the swim clubs were like 20-minute bits. So 45 minutes to me at the time was like, oh my God, that's a lifetime of material. How am I going to speak for 45 minutes? So I was all stressed out about it. Anyways, went and did it. The guy gave me $40. And
you've doubled your fee since then, though.
I know, like just about. He gave me $40 and I refused it. I said, no, I'm doing this. I'm doing this, because I like doing it. And it was one of a huge, big aha moments for me from a financial perspective. He said to me, no, that's what the money is for. I'm sorry we couldn't pay you more. It's worth a lot more. And I went, really? And coincidentally, there was a teacher in that audience of the youth group who came up to me and said, that was wonderful. How much do you charge to speak at schools? And I said, you can charge to speak at schools? And so I gave her the biggest number as a 19-year-old. And keep in mind, I'm a number third. And I was like doing math. I'm like, $40 for 45 minutes? At that rate, I'd be rich. And so she came up to me and she said, how much? And I gave her the biggest number I could think of. I said, I charge $300. And she said, that sounds really reasonable. I'd like to hire you. And I was like, okay. And she did something to me that, again, what turned out to be really, really helpful for growing my speaking business. She said, I tell you what, I'm going to invite a guidance counselor from another school, one of our sister schools, to come and watch the presentation. Because if they like you, they may or may not hire you. And he did, she did, and he hired me to that other school as well. And things just kind of snowballed from there. So 28 years later, and 2,000 audiences, 1 million people in person. People still haven't learned from their mistakes.
Richard, did you ever have one of those moments where when you first started, where they said you're not charging enough? I had one of those moments.
I still do.
Yeah.
But it's funny, Sunjay, because you said it was $300. That's Canadian, but that was my very first speaking fee, was $300. Now, given our age difference and the fact that you started much younger, it might have been about the same time. Maybe that was the going rate at the time. I don't know.
Mine, quick story. My first speaking engagement was with Bic pens. You know, Bic.
Yeah.
And I spoke, and I won't say for how much. I thought it was a decent amount. And I know. And my host was driving me to the airport in Denver, and he said, "Tobe," he said, "you're not charging enough." I said, "Well, what should I be charging?" And he told me, and that day I put my fees at that price. So you gotta, and I think there's a lesson there that we all need to listen to our customer, right?
Yeah, don't undervalue the value that you bring to your employer, to your customers, to whoever.
Exactly. So Sunjay, bring us up to date, and where did 108010 come from?
And I want to know when 108010 came from.
Yeah. Okay. So again, it's all, for me, it's all very organic. When I talk to marketing people about growing my business and stuff, I have a good split of people who think I'm a genius and people who think I'm the biggest idiot in the world. So here's been my marketing practice for the last 28 years. Yeah, I know which camp you're in, Jeff. You don't have to volunteer and answer here.
Okay.
My marketing technique has been a very complicated process. I hope you're sitting down for this. Here it is, right? I would sit by the phone and wait for it to ring. Ooh. And again, people go, well, that's great. It means that you obviously are creating value and it grows organically and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but at the other hand, if I was a little more systematic with it, or I was a little more intentional with it, I mean, there were days where I've literally flown to Los Angeles, and then the next day I'm in New York, and the third day I'm in Alberta. And, you know, if I had been a little more intentional and kind of, you know, made tours better and stuff, I could have been more effective. And I also need to learn to say no more as well. But so with that said, so you guys in the speaking world, you know that they say a busy speaker speaks 80 times a year. A stupid speaker speaks 100 times a year. So my record year, and this is, keep in mind, I was primarily youth, and I've been doing this 28 years. People still think I'm 12 now. 28 years ago, the only group I had credibility with was students. So my record year in the youth market, I did 186, I think, presentations. But keep in mind, you can do 2 schools or possibly even 3 schools. In fact, I've done 4 schools in a day. So it's a different campaign. So anyways, leadership and performance has always been sort of what's resonated with me. And it really started off with this for me is I realized in high school that the smartest kid didn't always get the best grades, and the most talented team didn't always win the championship, and the most qualified person doesn't always get the job or the scholarship. And so there was this other soft piece of it. So it wasn't hard skills, but there was attitude and stress level and eating properly and exercise and breathing and all this other stuff. And all that to me is leadership. So leadership's always been a part that just resonated with me. And so it's where I started with, did high schools and leadership conferences and student council events and that kind of thing. And anyway, so in my marketing campaign, this is an unintentional grassroots approach. 15 years ago, a guy called me and said, hey, I have your business card from orientation week 8 years ago. What can you do for corporates? And so what ended up happening was my content from a leadership perspective, still, I mean, the same rules and principles apply, but I needed something more sexy, packaged better. And it's still conceptually the same stuff. And so what I did was I said, how can I make it more catchy so that it sticks better? It's got a stickiness, a higher stickiness factor. And so I've always been a student of the game. I'm always reading or writing or researching or watching something. And what I found was every time I read something, watched something, learned something around leadership, it's the same principles kept on coming up time and time again. And so what I actually, in my office here on the wall, I have these 10 principles that I keep seeing over and over again. And so what I did was I went, how can I piece all these things together and kind of make a universal theory? And that's what kind of the 10-80-10 principle is. It's a bunch of inputs that I've heard literally for years or watched or seen, and I try to put them together to create a framework that's sticky, that when people hear it, it has an intuitive appeal where they go, well, yeah. And more often than not, that someone will go, I didn't realize I was doing that, but every time I've been successful on a project, we've had some sort of, this is kind of how it's played out. And so that's what it was. It was to meet the needs of a customer, to try to not look like I was a youth speaker speaking at a bank.
You know, it's funny because Richard and I don't know if people know this, but Richard and I teach a common course to the same base of clients. And in that course, there is a fairly complicated version of not of 10-80-10. It's another principle, but I end up showing your video after because I go, I can make it a lot easier. And I show the 10-80-10 principle. So
I want a quarter for every time you do that. It's residual income.
So what are the 10s and what is the 80?
Yeah.
All right. So what's the 10-80-10 principle? 10-80-10 principle says this: you can take any group of people and you can subdivide them into 3 groups. Top 10%,
1, 2, 3.
top 10%, bottom 10%, majority 80%. Top 10, bottom 10, majority 80. Okay, let me define each group. Top 10 gets to be there.
Why did you like triple your speed when you started this?
Why
Slow
did I, or
down.
why did I? I
Slow
told you.
down. Yeah.
He's imagining himself on a stage with
Exactly.
floodlight.
You're telling me I got to speak slower? You get me going, man. It's your
Sorry.
fault. So you got your top 10%, you got your bottom 10%, you got your majority 80 in the middle. So top 10 are people who want to be there. They go early, they leave late. Bottom 10 have to be there. They go late, but they leave early, right? Always complaining. And the majority 80 tends to follow whichever group is more empowered. Whichever group has more social influence and accolade will shift up the majority 80 or shift them down. So a great example where you've probably seen this, if you've ever given a standing ovation to a live play or a live event that you didn't really believe deserved a standing ovation. So let me give you what happened.
The guy beside me stood up. So
There you go. Exactly. That's 100% exactly the way it works. So you're sitting there, you're watching it, you're going, yeah, it's cute, meh, whatever. You're not booing it, but you're not on your feet either. So you're what's called the majority 80. You're a go with the flow kind of guy. But if you happen to be sitting next to the lead role's mother, right? As soon as the curtain calls, she's hooting and hollering and throwing roses. Like, oh, that's my baby. Oh. She's freaking out. She's on her feet, clapping, yelling, hooting, and hollering. So she's what's called the top 10. And often the top 10 and bottom 10 get very empowered. And if they are empowered through energy, attention, thoughts, and resources, then other people tend to follow them. So she's hooting and hollering, yay, yay, yay. Other people around her start standing up as well. And so
Should they not know who she is? They don't necessarily know that she's the star's mother.
It's completely irrelevant. All they know is everyone else around them starting to stand up. So they're like, fine, out of whether it's social convention or not trying to be rude or whatever, they stand up and they end up giving a standing ovation. So here's an example where the top 10 is empowered and the majority 80 follows them. But let me give you an example where the bottom 10 is empowered and the majority 80 follows them. Have you ever been in a presentation that is so excruciatingly bad that it's a complete waste of your time? You feel embarrassment for the speaker, and you look around the audience, and people are pulling out their phones, they're having side conversations, and the next thing you know, you've pulled out your phone as well. So you're kind of going with the flow. Everyone else is doing it. The bottom 10 get empowered. You're looking around, all you see is bottom 10 behaviors, and that's all you do. I can give you countless examples. This is how the entire meltdown of 2009, this is what happened. You had a few of these banks doing shady practices of these loans, and it became common practice. Well, everyone else was doing it. They knew it was a bottom 10 behavior, but everyone else started doing it. What eventually happened is the majority 80 starts to follow. But here's the magic, or here's the secret sauce of the 10-80-10 principle. Okay, so once you have the top, actually, this is to implement it. It's really what it comes down to. If you're trying to get something done, you always have top 10 people supporting it. You always have bottom 10 people pulling you away. And what you want to try and do is influence, thank you, Clark, influence the majority 80. And the question is, how do you do that? Well, what you want to do is you want to neutralize the bottom 10 and empower the top 10. Because this is what ends up happening. If you empower the top 10, the majority 80 will start to follow. Okay? Once that happens, this magical secret sauce, the bottom 10 actually does one of two things organically. Either it follows everyone, they go, wait for me, I want to join the group, or they go, I don't want to be part of this, and they leave, and you get natural attrition.
So that answers Lisa's question. How do you engage the bottom 10%?
You don't.
You probably can't engage the entire 10%, but some will choose to join the 80 and others will choose to go to the street.
100%. So exactly what you want to do is you want to neutralize the bottom 10, which is not engagement at all. And neutralize, my language is, you want to spend the minimal amount of time, energy, attention, and thought so it no longer draws resources. So let me give you an example. Again, as a presenter, and here's the smart ass line I often use on stage. I go, as a presenter, you may find this hard to believe, but sometimes I'm in front of audiences and not everyone in the audience wants to be there. I know I'm probably the only person in the history of the world that's ever happened to. All right. And what do we do is we see the one guy in the back corner, hacking away at his iPhone, and we see them and we try to engage them. And we send them love and we send them energy. And if it's a coworker, we bake them muffins, we invite them to the Christmas party, and we try to engage them. And this is the bottom 10 strategy. Typically, bottom 10 strategies lead to what I call the triple whammy. 3 whammies. Whammy number 1. The person's behavior does not change. Just because you bought them a muffin or because you smiled at them because they're sitting in the audience on their phone, they don't start listening to you. So that's whammy number 1. Whammy number 2, you get demotivated. You see, all the time and energy you're wasting with the energy vampire or that energy black hole ends up going nowhere. And whammy number 3 is, and here's actually the most powerful one, all the resources you're wasting on the bottom 10, you could have been making a difference to the people who actually are looking for direction. So rather than spending and wasting your resources on the bottom 10, you can actually engage people through rechanneling your energies. So you want to implement it, you want to neutralize the bottom 10. So if someone is chatting in my group as a speaker, actually, let me back up. If someone is on their phone and disengaged, but they're quiet, my neutralization strategy is really quite simple. I'm going to ignore them. And when you ignore them, it's not the second guessing ignoring. It's not the, oh, he's not paying attention. Oh, he must not like me, or she hates me, or she's tweeting about me, or whatever. No, you got to let it go, because you're spending time, energy, attention, and thought obsessing about what they're doing. You neutralize, you let it go.
Yeah.
Now,
and what you're saying is your potential to be of value or to help rests with the 80 and the top 10.
Absolutely. And you have more influence over the top 10 than you do with the 80. So what you want to do is create an army with the top 10 to recruit the 80 to be on your side. Yeah. But in order to do that, you have to first neutralize the bottom 10, which is you got to disempower them. So again, going back to this,
shift your resources. You want to shift your resources, your energy from there to there. And that gets a little bit to Mark's question where he says, or comment, he says, you have more leaders in the 80% than you know. Find them and release them.
But that's what I'm saying is actually you don't want to find them. You want to actually get the top 10 to find them for you. Because so you want them to be found, don't get me wrong. But I'm saying is if you are in an organization of 100 people, and you are targeting 80 of the majority 80, you have limited resources and limited interaction. So what you want to do is you want to take your self-defined, your self-selected top 10 folks and empower them. Because what's going to happen is they're going to automatically attract them. It's exactly what Clark's saying. There's a magnet factor that's going to happen there.
Yeah.
I noticed that I've spoken at over 1,200 schools in my career. And I find this really weird, and I'm pretty sure it's related to 10-80-10. Schools where I walk into and they have nice display cases, meaning they're up to date, they're not falling apart, and their
photographs are in color, yeah,
and they're prominent when you walk in, as opposed to in the back corner of the 3rd D wing. I find the behavior of the students to be better. And again, this is completely unofficial. This is just an observation. Whereas I found when the display cases are broken or they haven't been updated since 1984. The behavior of the students is different. And I think it's 10-80-10 because what you've done is you've taken your top 10, you're giving it resources, you're giving it time, you're giving it attention, you're giving it resources, you're giving it thought. And so people walk into the school kind of going, one day I want my name on there. One day I want to be the MVP of the volleyball team. One day I want to get on the school reach team or whatever it is. And what you're actually doing is empowering the top 10. So going back to the audience, bottom 10, if he's on his phone, saying nothing, I neutralize by ignoring. If he has his laptop open and it's on full blast and he's watching YouTube videos and he's elbowing his neighbor going, oh, that speaker sucks. Hey, check this out. It's way funnier. My strategy is going to be different. I might invite him to leave. I might give the people an activity to do and then have a one-on-one conversation with them. I might just kick him out. Whatever it is. But the idea
you might invite him up on stage to do your presentation.
Absolutely. You want attention, you got it. Where are you going? And I've done all these techniques, and which one you do depends on your experience level and what you're comfortable doing. I mean, in the youth market, speaking to a school of 1,000 kids, there's always one who wants to be a bigger smart ass than I am. good luck.
Hard to do. That's a heavy pull.
Right.
Yeah.
So once I've neutralized, I don't want to even think about the bottom 10 anymore. What I want to do is I want to think about the top 10. Who's the top 10 of my audience? I know who they are. They flag themselves. They're smiling, they're nodding, they're leaning forward, they're taking notes. Right. So what do I want to do? I want to engage them. How? Well, sometimes what speakers do is you want to engage an audience, you try to make them laugh. What's the number one reason why an audience laughs? It's not actually when you're funny. Any guesses?
When you surprise them.
Not quite. It's actually hearing other people laugh.
Okay.
Right. This is why we have our laugh tracks in our sitcoms. It's easier to hide it in there. Why? Because that's like the top 10 behavior. And the whole premise of 10-80-10 comes from Newton's first law of motion. A body in motion tends to stay in motion. A body at rest tends to stay at rest. Or to said in a non-scientific way, action follows action, and inaction follows inaction. So if people are laughing, it's easier to laugh. Right. So I'm going to try to get them to laugh. Do I tell it to the bottom 10 folk? No, they don't even know I'm telling the joke. I tell it to the top 10. Do I know who my top 10 are? Yes. Remember, they're flagging themselves.
Yeah.
I tell them a joke. They do better than laugh. They guffaw and they chortle and they slap their knee and they go, oh, he's one funny dude. They start laughing, and then the majority 80 starts laughing. Then you get this critical mass. This is your top 10 plus your majority 80. Once you hit that critical mass, the bottom 10 does something that I think is, again, quite remarkable. It splits up into two groups. One group goes, what? What do you say? Was it funny? And they elbow their neighbor and they ask for the joke. Or the other guy goes, I'm trying to send an email. And he leaves. And you get their natural attrition. And either way, it's a desired result.
Yeah.
As the top 10 gets empowered, the majority 80 follows. Once you hit that critical mass, the bottom 10 break apart. Some leave, some join, stair-stepping you towards your desired result.
So
that's what it is.
Let me jump in because you speak so quickly. I can't even get a word in edgewise. But this is great, and I love the fact, and I've heard you speak many times. So I love the fact that you talk about the fact that this is not just a leadership principle. This applies to every part of your life, which I really found interesting. And I've often thought about my parents who didn't know anything about the 10-80-10 principle or any principle for that matter. But I hung around with a fairly large group, and we definitely had high achievers, and then we had no achievers, and I was always the 80. And I remember my dad especially, who was very outgoing and was very friendly with my friends who were those high achievers. And I believe that's what he was doing. He was influencing me because he was friendly with them and motivation. So my question, I have a question here, and that is, share with us some principles around the 10-80-10 principle, or some lessons learned that everyone, this audience, that everyone can take away.
Sure. First of all, I'm going to argue that you said your parents didn't know any principles. Yeah, they knew your high school principal because I'm sure he was calling you all the time. So.
I spent more time in his office than anybody else.
Exactly. Okay, actually, I'll give a great example. This is really applicable to today. So the idea is that where we put our energy, our attention and our energy, whether it's top 10 or bottom 10.
Hey, energy, I like that.
I'm making up words.
We have a new word, everybody.
Title of my next book.
Where we put our energy and our attention and our resources will attract the majority 80. So if you spend all your time bitching and complaining and fighting with the bottom 10, the organization will gravitate towards the bottom 10. Yeah. That's why I say you want to neutralize the bottom 10 and then power the top 10. How many people on this call, and I'm going to give you, I've done this with live audiences, so I'm going to give you the answers. But if I was to ask how many people know what the prime rate is, and I'm going to guess the answer typically is like 5 to 10%. But when I ask people, how many people know what the cost of gas is? And 90% of people put up their hand. And I go, I think, to me, that's really, really interesting, because for most people, and I'm going to guess again, most people on this call at one point or another have had a mortgage. And if the prime rate changes depending on the life of your mortgage, it could literally make tens of thousands of dollars of difference financially to you. But at the flip side, if gas was to go up 10 cents, and the reason I say this is applicable because it actually went up 10 cents today in Ontario. It went up 10 cents, and I'm going to try to speak American and Canadian. Trust me, the math works, and I can do both. So if it goes up 50 cents a gallon overnight, that's a pretty extreme case. It very rarely, if ever, happens. But in my particular car, if it goes up 10 cents or 50 cents, 10 cents a liter or 50 cents a gallon, it roughly makes about, given the size of my tank, about a $6 to $7 difference to fill up my tank. Okay. Assuming I fill up my tank once a week, that's about $1 a day. Now, if the prime rate changes, which it has been a lot lately, people don't really talk about it. But when the price of gas changes, every radio station is now talking about 10 cents, they're gouging us. Oh, it must be a long weekend coming up. Oh, on and on. Why is it we track a $1 item?
That's a great example, great point.
We don't care about the tens of thousands of dollars. And the answer is 1080-10. So let me explain to you why. When you drive through the street, what is physically the largest number you will see in a city? It's the price of gas signs.
The price of gas.
They're freaking huge. They're phenomenal.
Not numerically, but literally.
Literally, they are large.
Image, yes.
They are literally large signs. So when they change, you notice. However, how large is the prime rate in your mortgage contract physically? It is written in pencil as a sub-appendix, footnote for Appendix G. So you don't notice. And so, I mean, here's an example of where the attention goes, the people will flow. And so if you want a behavior to exist within your organization, and some people are exhibiting and some people are not, the common logic is, oh, well, these people are already doing it. They're self-starters, we'll ignore them. Let's go to war and fight the bottom 10. And you're actually having the very opposite effect of what you want, because you're giving these people attention and the majority will start to follow them. What you want to do is the opposite, which is neutralize the bottom 10, which is if you can ignore them, ignore them. If not, give them constraints, whatever it is, and then spend all your time with your top 10 and doing showcases and giving them highlights and videos and interviews of them implementing the change and the successes they've had and the rewards they get from doing it. The majority of you will start going, I'm in, I want to play as well. And then you get to this point where you get the critical mass, which is your top 10 plus your majority 80. Then the bottom 10, the naysayers will kind of go, really? Does that really work? And they'll try it, or they'll go, I didn't sign up for this with this job. I don't want to be part of this cult. And they leave. And either way, it's a desired result.
Wow.
So,
one of the best things about this episode, I think, has been Sunjay's impersonations of the bottom 10.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
By the way, I just want to address one of the comments in the chat. You know, it just says where Shelley sort of fits in, because she's been doing her mortgage while we've been talking. So she said she's got it right in front of her. So I imagine there's more interesting things than us.
She would be in that 5 to 10% that would know the prime rate, but most others.
And Carol wants to know where to send her $40.
There you go.
For your speakers fee, along with everybody else.
It's gone up.
So what I'm saying, what I'm hearing you say, Sunjay, is, yeah, highlight, focus the top 10%, and other people are going to be drawn up there. We don't have a lot of time, but I'm just wondering, conceptually for you, can the 10-80-10 at some point become a 10-40-50?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
I say 10-80-10 because it rolls off the tongue better than 20-60-20 or 5-95, or if the mathematically inclined, pi, 100 minus 2 pi, pi. There's a top group and a bottom group, and there always is.
Yeah.
And what we can do is we can shift it up over time, so that your top 10 is what it was a year ago. Their top 10 will be higher now than what it was a year ago. So you're constantly migrating upward. So will it change? Yeah, because we're dealing with the behaviors of human beings. It's not an exact science. There's more symmetry in it than that. But I mean, this way I would see it is there's always a top 10 and there's always a bottom 10. So think of it this way. Even an all-star team has its weakest players. Now, compared to the rest of the league, those weakest players, the bottom 10 of the all-star team, are probably better than the other teams.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're striving for. But there's always relative, because it's a relative framework. There's always relatively a top 10 and a bottom 10.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And again, I want to stress the fact that, you know, this isn't leadership and performance. This is life.
Yeah, this is life in general. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I use examples where you guys are making fun of me for being a little heavier in my pictures. I lost 40 pounds using 10-80-10.
Yeah.
I've had people send me emails going, I lost 80 pounds using 10-80-10. I now have less fights with my family because we use a 10-80-10 dynamic to decide where we're going for vacation. I've had
Wow.
people say our sales have increased 30% by using 10-80-10 for our salespeople.
Right.
So yeah,
Wow.
there's implications as long as you're willing to read into it and do the work.
Yeah.
It has a lot of universal applications.
So-
Well, we haven't spent 10, 80, or 10 minutes. We have spent 44 and a half minutes, and it is now time to wrap this up. But I
I
know,
want to put a quick plug in if I can. Just
yeah.
if you loved what you heard today and you've heard all of us, you kind of tell you what we do. We are available, and I want to stress that all four of us would love to come to one of your corporate meetings and have a conversation with the CEO or COO and at a corporate event. Be a lot of fun. So, Richard, do you want to wrap things up?
Well, I want you to tell us about our guest that we're going to have in 2 weeks on
Yeah.
October the 19th.
I am so excited. So our guest is Dr. Deborah Gilboa. Deborah is a world expert in stress, not causing it, but helping us to relieve it. As a matter of fact, Deborah, if you check her out, Google her, you'll find that she was on the Today Show just, I think, last week or in the last couple of weeks. Anyway, she was featured on the
It is
Today
a
Show.
prerequisite. It's a prerequisite for being our guest. You have to be at least on the stage.
Well, fortunately, we got her booked before she was on the Today Show, so I'm sure that she's far more popular after that. So, but she'll be here 2 weeks, and I am very excited. Please, everybody, make sure you come and bring a friend.
And by the way,
There's
it's
a question about where can you get the book. I would just go to
there you
sunjaynath.com.
go. There you go. Thank you, Ashley.
sunjaynath.com.
It's obvious, I think, who's the top 10, bottom 10 majority is of the three of us. So I don't think we need to answer that. It's so obvious.
All right, folks. Well, it's time for us to say it's been great to have you with us all. Sunjay, thank you so much. Again, learned a lot about you, even though I've known you for years. And when will we see everybody again?
Every
Every
other
other
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
In
Bye,
2
guys.
weeks.
Thanks,
Bye,
folks.
guys.